I recall a time when I was teaching in the Ukraine and had only a few minutes to reach my destination by metro. I rushed to the station, ran down the stairs, and jumped on the train just as the doors were closing. It was going to be a long ride, all the way across town, so I sat back to catch my breath and relax for a few minutes. Then, after a while, it suddenly dawned on me that I had taken the train going in the wrong direction. Now, naturally, the next metro station was miles away, and it took forever to reach it. By the time I got turned around and started back, it was clear that I was going to be very late. I can remember thinking to myself, well, this situation isn't all that I hoped it would be, but at least now I'm going in the right direction. I guess that's the way it is in most areas of life. Our situations are never perfect, and most of the time they're not even close. We face lots of problems and challenges everywhere we go, yet we all know that it is still better at least to be going in the right direction rather than the wrong way. We've entitled this lesson, The Right Direction, and in it we are going to explore Genesis chapter 6 verse 9 through chapter 11 verse 9, where we'll discover the direction God established for His people to follow after the great flood in the days of Noah. As we will see, in these chapters of the primeval history, Moses gave the people of Israel a clear direction to pursue. It may not have been all that they wanted, but it was ordained by God to bring them toward great blessings. And this portion of the primeval history is very important for Christians too, because we should be following this same direction as well. Our study of Genesis chapter 6 verse 9 through chapter 11 verse 9 will divide into three parts. First, we will examine the literary structure of these chapters. Second, we'll explore their original meaning by discerning why Moses wrote this material for Israel. And third, we will look to the New Testament for guidance in applying these chapters to our lives. Let's begin our study of the right direction by exploring the literary structure of these chapters. Genesis chapter 6 verse 9 through chapter 11 verse 9 is a large portion of the primeval history, and it may be outlined in a number of different ways. For our purposes, we have segmented these chapters into two main parts. The first section includes chapter 6 verse 9 through chapter 9 verse 17, and we have entitled it The Flood of Deliverance. In this part of Genesis, Moses described the flood of Noah's day. The second part of this material is Genesis chapter 9 verse 18 through chapter 11 verse 9, which we have entitled The New Order. It describes several crucial events that took place after the flood, and which set enduring patterns that characterized the world after the flood. To gain a better understanding of the literary pattern of these chapters, we will look into both of these major parts. Let's begin by examining the structure of the story Moses wrote about the flood of Noah's day. In recent years, a number of interpreters have noticed that the story of Noah's flood displays a relatively clear literary pattern. Although it's possible to describe this pattern in a number of ways, in this study we will point out how these chapters form a symmetrical five-step drama. The first step of this narrative appears in Genesis chapter 6 verses 9 through 22, and we will call it the initial divine covenant with Noah. In this portion of the narrative, Moses noted that Noah was a righteous man in a world that had gone sour. God spoke to Noah and revealed why he planned to destroy the human race. We read these words in Genesis chapter 6 verse 13. So God said to Noah, I am going to put an end to all people, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. I am surely going to destroy both them and the earth. Yet the first step of this narrative also tells us that God planned to start over again by delivering one man and his family, namely righteous Noah. To assure Noah of his intention, God entered into an initial covenant with Noah. In Genesis chapter 6 verses 17 and 18, we read that God said these words to Noah, Everything on earth will perish, but I will establish my covenant with you, and you will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife and your sons' wives with you. At the beginning of the flood narrative, God swore a covenant oath to rescue Noah and his family from the coming flood. This covenant secured Noah's deliverance and established him as the head of a new humanity after the flood.